Gruesome Magazine.
Hello once again, I am Doc Rotten, and this is Gruesome Magazine, where we review the very latest in streaming and video on-demand horror movies. Each week, my co-host Jeff Mohr, Crystal Cleveland, Dave Dreher, and I will take a look at various spooky, scary, and gory genre offerings. Tonight, we are reviewing Widow's Point. It's an adaptation of a very popular book of the same name. So let's see what we do. Now we're going to get into it. Stick around. But first I have to introduce the crew. So let's find out who they are. Starting off with, yes, Jeff Mohr. Jeff, how you doing, sir?
I'm doing good. I was out and about today in the world's worst town, in the world's worst state.
Yes, you were. Yes, you were. All right. Also joining us is Crystal Cleveland, the Living Dead girl. How you doing? Nice background.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. See, it's another lighthouse movie. If you can't tell, that's Widow's Point. I keep wanting to call it Widow's Peak, but it's Widow's Point. Yeah.
Well, that's better than me because I keep wanting to call it Windows Point. So
really,
where did that extra N come from? I don't know, but it keeps typing in there. But
I wish I had a widow's peak.
Widow's Peak.
I know, right?
All right. Rounding out the crew is my buddy from H&R, Dave Dreher. How you doing, Dave?
Hello. I know where the N is coming from, but I'm not going to tell you because I want to torment you.
Oh.
Well, you do that anyway.
Because you're like that.
You are the torment of my life.
It is true. It is true.
And that's why I love you.
The evil truth comes out. The evil truth comes out.
We call him the tormentor.
Oh my gosh. Yes. All right. So what that means is we're going to dive into Widow's Point. Almost did it. Widow's Point. I don't know what that's wrong with me. Widow's Point. So we're going to review the film. We're each going to give us our first impressions, and then we're going to dive into some discussion, and then we're going to round out the show with our final thoughts, our score 1 to 5, and our favorite scene. So that's the fun part. You want to stick around for that and enjoy it. But first, what the hell film are we talking about? Do you know what we're talking about? We're talking about Widow's Point. I'm saying it slow, Widow's Point, because I don't want that N to fly in there. It's on VOD September 1st, 2020 from 101 Films. It is written and directed by Gregory Lamberson. That's the guy behind Johnny Gruesome, if you remember that a few years back. I didn't know that until just before the show. It's based on a book by Billy Chizmar and Richard Chizmar. And Dave's going to tell us more about that here in a minute. It stars Craig Sheffer. You guys probably recognize that name. We'll talk about that in a bit. KateLynn E. Newberry, Dominic Luongo, KateLynn Lamberson, John Renna, Richard Saderwhite, and many, many others. The synopsis is: an author who spends a weekend locked in a haunted lighthouse as a publicity stunt for his next book becomes a target of powerful supernatural forces. And oh my, does he ever. This is going to be fun, guys. Strap in. This movie. Who is going to be first? Well, since Dave can tell us about the authors, Dave Dreher, you're first. What's your impression of Widow's Point?
Well, and full disclosure here, Gregory Lamberson and I have been friends for decades. I've known Greg as a writer for a very long time. And so, got to keep that in mind. I have a fondness for Mr. Lamberson's written work. I'm not going to try to convince you that this is a great film because it certainly has its challenges. But with that being said, I think there is some really good stuff in there. Greg is a filmmaker based out of Buffalo, New York. He's been very active in the New York film scene since the 80s. He got the gig to adapt and make this film based on the Richard Chizmar book. And it's actually a pretty faithful adaptation of the book. It just kind of doesn't play as well in film. And we've seen this before. This happens with Stephen King quite a bit, where it just doesn't make the story's not as good on film as it is as a written word. And unfortunately, I think that holds true here. Greg seems to have kind of gone for almost like a made for TV feel, or a soap opera feel, just in his score selection, and how the music crescendos at different moments. Reminded, I thought I was watching like Dark Shadows a couple times.
Nice. Yeah, I like that.
But I think, and I haven't talked to Greg about this. He knows we're reviewing it, but I haven't talked to him about the film. But knowing him, I think a lot of that was purposeful. I think he did it. He kind of wanted it to look like a horror version of Dallas. And I think maybe he accomplished that to some degree. But it's certainly, and I'm sure we're going to get into them as we go here. But the story, I think, is a really good story about the haunted lighthouse and the different stories of the entities that reside there.
Yeah, we've been getting a lot of haunted, lighthouse movies, and it was refreshing this one to be slightly different. I will say that. And
did you notice that every time they would go to the literary agent, the gentleman, I guess he was in New York or whatever, there was always artwork up on the walls. That's Stephen King Salem's Lot was up there, and then one of Greg's books, one of his Jake Hellman books were up there, and one of the Blake novels was up there, and so that was fun for me. I would watch that because these are all people that are in his circle, and giving them a little love, So I thought that was kind of fun, but the normal watcher wouldn't probably even notice that. So.
Yeah, me. All right. Up next, Crystal Cleveland. What was your first impression of Widow's Point?
Okay, so I can see. So it started out, and let me just say, Craig Sheffer, I think, did an amazing job. I really liked his performance in this, and I think he had a lot of range and a lot of different places he had to go to, especially toward the end, and I appreciated it all. Of course, I'm a massive fan of Nightbreed, so I could be a little tainted as well, but I think he did fantastic. However, if I'm being completely honest, the one scene with the set, the acting was really bad, and actually that took me completely out of the movie. I think that the movie was actually shot really well, and I think the story, there's so much story to this. There's so many different little pieces that have to come together and fit together well. But I'm not kidding. When I saw that scene, I was like, ooh, like it felt like a super duper low rent, low budget film because of the acting. And that was the only thing that didn't work in that scene to me, unfortunately. God, and I hate saying that because I feel like, I know it's tough being an actor, but it was just rough. So that was the first thing that drew me out of the movie. There was a couple places where I think it was, because they have to tell so much of a story, and some of it kind of comes together in different ways. It was told in different points, and I actually really liked that, and I liked the way it came together toward the end. Like this story actually fit with this story. Like the girl was actually part of this, and that I didn't really actually notice it until they actually put it in front of our face. I liked it, and I was entertained, but it was not scary at all. And I've got to be honest, it still all goes back to that scene, that acting scene, or whatever. It was a set where the actress commits suicide. That whole scene was absolutely laughable. The woman in white standing out there and the girl looking at her. Oh, sorry, but it was very cringy. It was cringy. Like, and that part alone, I think, quite honestly, if that whole bit had been left out of the movie, it would have been a far better film for me, because that tainted it. I'm sorry, but it did.
I'm not arguing with you.
Yeah.
All right.
Everything but the hanging.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just how she was just sitting there, and then she's like, it will come or whatever, and I was like, oof. And then she's like this, and she turns around, she's like, ah. It's like, oh no.
I like how the rope was just the right length so that she would just almost hit the ground, but not quite.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
so she fall in frame, and plus, if she fell from that distance, it just would have popped her fucking head off.
Popped her,
she-
yeah.
Well, there is
Yeah.
that. There is that. All right.
And isn't it weird that one scene it really just bothered me. I think that made the rest of it look worse than, because it was actually good. It actually started getting better. I was like, okay, I can get behind this. Sorry, but yeah.
Jeff Mohr, you're up next. What's your first impression of Widow's Point?
Did you say window? No, you said
No,
window.
I did not.
You said it right. You said it right.
Try not to.
This really kind of fell flat for me. I could see there was a good story in there. I liked the idea of the haunted lighthouse and the woman. I wanted to see more of the original widow, right?
Yes.
Which kind of flew by in a sort of a little voiceover story, whereas the other two scenes we actually saw them play out. I kind of like the hanging, and yeah, the rope was the exact right spot. Yeah, it would rip your head off. But one of the things I thought was kind of cool was that she didn't come to an abrupt stop. It was like a little stretchy, like the rope would have stretched a little bit.
Oh yeah, a little bungee cord thing going on.
Yeah. Well, a rope would stretch. It doesn't just pull up tight. So, anyway, I liked the scenes with the poker game with the brother in the house. I thought that was cool, at least when he actually does his thing, I guess I'll say.
Does his thing.
He does his thing. Well,
Camera time.
he doesn't do his thing. He does other people. So anyway, yeah. I thought that was pretty good. The rest of it, things that were meant to be scary or I would want to be scary, like Crystal said, weren't scary. I don't know. I think part of it might have been the lighting. It just seemed like it was, a lot of times it was too light. I think it is kind of complicated, and I think things were left out. I saw the old man, I guess he's the caretaker or something, that lets Craig Sheffer's character into the house part of it and tells him, "You're never going in the lighthouse." And then, I don't know, the next day he comes back with a key and lets him into the lighthouse.
There was a lot of those continuity. They did the same thing with when they opened it up. He said the air smells bad. He's like, "Well, it hasn't been opened up for 30 years." And then next scene is that the cop going up that same staircase to get that research.
Yes.
Right. I was like, well, wait a minute. It hasn't been opened in 30 years. How the fuck is it going up and now? It doesn't make any sense.
Oh, yeah.
And then, things like, how many ghost stories have you seen a ball roll out of the darkness, right? And it can be, it's an obvious trope, but it can be done well and it can be creepy. But this was sort of like, I don't know, it was way too damn light. It was just like, yep, there's a ball on the floor. It didn't really get me. And then it drops out of the sleeping bag, and they had this big crescendo in the music, and there just wasn't anything to be crescendoed, I guess. I wasn't feeling it, I guess.
You wasn't feeling it. They wanted you to feel it, though. They're like, it's time to feel it.
So, yeah, I kind of felt like there was a good story behind this, but it lost something in translation to the screen in this case.
Yeah, I'm going to say pretty much the same thing, guys. I will say there are moments in this film that I really did enjoy. Most of them have to do with Craig Sheffer's Thomas Livingston when he's starting to really lose it, and some of the fun tricks they did with the stairs. Just because he was so damn entertaining. I'm not sure if it fit everything else going on around it, but I was all aboard with him. I also like the young girl. And I'm not sure which character is her, if it was Delaney Collins or
Delaney.
Okay.
Delaney.
And that's KateLynn Lamberson. So I thought she was really good.
And Andre was good with her too. Like the techie dude.
Yeah. Well, also I like this. So Rosa and Andre, right?
Rosa
Were
is the
right.
yeah.
I like them as well. All right. Jeff will appreciate this. If you guys are out there and you've seen The Crawling Eye from 1958, there's such a thing that I was just like, that's The Crawling Eye from 1958. Almost, when you see this movie and you've seen The Crawling Eye, you will know what I'm talking about. I will say that I didn't know the material, so when that kind of starts to happen, I was like, okay, well, I'm on board with this. Let's do it. Let's do it. But the movie is not even. There's some scenes that work. There's some scenes that don't. The lighting, I don't think it was lit appropriately, and the music wasn't appropriate, at least for the movie I wanted. Dave, what you were saying about maybe what they were after makes a little bit more sense. And I guess I just wasn't. I didn't think that's the movie we were going for, and if they, I just didn't catch that. But if you're a fan of Craig Sheffer and Lighthouse films, there's stuff here to watch. There's things happen. It's not dull in that way, but it can be a little bit of a labor of love to watch. Let's put it that way.
It's definitely Craig Schaefer's movie, right?
Well,
yeah.
And it should, right? Because his character is the reason why they're there, and
he looks good too. Like, he looks good.
Well, he certainly has that. He's got that man bun thing going on, and then when he has the hair.
I like man buns. I don't care what anyone says.
But when his hair is kind of like unbunned,
it's kind of crazy. I think
it's kind of crazy, and it works so well. Yeah. So I thought he really made that character work, and I liked his boss too. I thought he was. Hey, like, no, man, this guy's
He's
great.
like, just trust him. He's totally got it under control. Yeah.
I think he's in trouble. No, man, he knows what he's doing. I just loved it all, that part of it. And the Crawling Eye part. I gotta say, I was a sucker for that. It's kind of bad. But it's so fun.
Well, you know what Dave's saying about the Dark Shadows thing? The more that I'm like thinking about it, I can feel it even more. Like when I think of the way the lighthouse is, the lighthouse really does seem like a set more than an actual place. It does seem, all the places seem like sets versus locations, which could contribute to that sort of look. But I do have to say, yes, I think a lot of it is playing with the lighting would have been really effective, much more effective.
I mean,
during the day, it can still be scary.
Mm-hmm.
Things can be scary during the day. Midsommar proved that. I know. Sorry, Dave. I know you hate it, but there are things that can be scary during the day. But it has to be done right. A woman in white in bright daylight, looking like that, is super cringy. Mm-hmm. It's just makes me sad.
I will say that there are some camera work things going on here that I liked. Because they're in tight quarters, right? Because they're in the stairwell, they're in this relatively small room, even though it does feel like it felt like they were like on maybe like a tricked out escape room or something. I don't know. It felt interesting. But there's a couple shots where the camera was obviously handheld and would circle around Craig, and then return to focus on his face and his reaction to things, and I enjoyed those moments. I think all the moments when our Rosa and Andre were, trying to figure out what's going on, I thought those worked out really well. I thought those were lit better, and they were good actors, so it all worked.
I like them too. I didn't have a problem with them at all. Like I feel like they were just. I think even the way she reacted and the way she tried to deal with it, I think was perfectly acceptable. Like I'm saying, I think a lot of it I enjoyed and I didn't have a problem with. But then there were these, it's odd because I guess you're right. Like it's completely disjointed because it's like, I'm like, this is good. This is bad.
Yeah. And how do you adjust? How do you adjust? Right.
Like I really had very specific thoughts on different. Yeah. It's kind of crazy.
Jeff, have you read the book as well?
I have not.
Okay.
I am familiar with Richard Chizmar, although most of what I've read of his were his anthologies. He did a bunch of collected a bunch of anthologies, probably 30 years ago.
Yeah, because the story's built in a way that feels like it's very like chapters, and it holds that chapter feel. You know, here's the chapter about these characters, the chapter about those characters, here's the chapter about those characters, and some of those transitions into the stories worked, and then some of them not so much. I thought it felt a little like, okay, now we're into another story. Jeff, did the narration part of that, did that work for you? How they handled those segments when they flashback? I guess they're flashbacks, right? Technically, they're flashbacks.
Yeah, I mean, I guess so. Like Crystal said, and I'm trying to think of this now in terms of what Dave said, and I guess if that was the intent, I didn't catch on. I could see that now, in terms of the Dark Shadow style, but I wasn't getting it, I guess. Yeah, in terms of the way they were put in, I didn't like the way the last one was put in, because everything else was put in based on Craig Sheffer's research, and then all of a sudden Rosa tells a story about the original widow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and that just seemed kind of weird to me. Like, when did she do all the research about that? Maybe I missed the connection there, but
maybe she was reading the folder he gave her.
Yeah. And they didn't seem all that concerned about not losing the video.
Yeah.
Well, I felt like she was, but
like
she also didn't want to mess it up. It's like, at what point, when you're producing a show, at what point do you decide to essentially ruin the show and put a stop to it? Because that's basically the whole thing. Like, he didn't even want to mess with the footage to try to get the footage back because it would be considering tampering. If they had gone further and opened the door or done any of that stuff, it could have, that would have been the same sort of thing. That's a hard call to make.
Well, Dave, I'm getting ready to ask you a question. This will be the last question before we do our final thoughts and stuff. And Dave, you'll probably, I hope you take the bus I'm getting ready to park on your head a little bit.
Boy, hang on. We're having problems with the connection. I can't hear you.
Okay, so I always ask you about effects, and there's a creature in this. That's one thing I enjoyed. A little bit of the spoilers. There is a creature, and if you didn't get the crawling eye reference, well, figure it out. Dave, I want to know your thoughts about the creature.
Well, really, honestly, I want to talk to Greg about that because I'm not sure what he was going for. It definitely, I think you'd agree with this, Doc. It's got that old school sci-fi kind of feel to it.
Absolutely.
And again, I haven't talked to Greg about this, but knowing him and conversations we've had in the past, it wouldn't surprise me if he put that in there purposely in that fashion as an homage to those old school films. Now, if he didn't, and it was just because he had 35 cents to do the effect, that's a different story. But I don't know. I can't really say. I can tell you, I enjoyed it much like you, Doc. When I seen it, I was like, "Yes, this is awesome." Although it looked a little hokey.
It looked like 1958. I'm saying, but it was
fun. Yeah, it was really fun. And I enjoyed it. I think today's more picky audience, younger audience, is going to look at it and go, "What the hell?" They're not going to get it. Much like, again, if my theory is correct and the tone he decided to film this in was purposeful to play more like a TV show or a made-for-TV movie, then I think it's brilliant. And if that wasn't his thing, then it's just like, oh, well, that's too bad. So I'm going to choose to assume it was a choice.
Yes,
and I think he pulled it off beautifully. If it turns out to not be true, then I will stand corrected.
Yeah, well, maybe better not to know. All right. So what we're going to do now is our final thoughts, our score 1 to 5, and our favorite scene. We're going to wrap this up. But before we do, if you are enjoying what we're doing here, please hit the subscribe button down below. Hit the like, hit the dislike, either way you want. And leave us some comments. And we'd love to hear from you. And there's a bell there. If you hit the bell and set it up, you'll get notified every time we do a new one. And you can keep up with all this wonderful content we're doing. Yes. Yes. All right, let's do this. Let's wrap it up. Dave, you are first, sir. Oh my gosh, let's do this. Give us your final thoughts, your score, and a favorite scene. You can't take mine. But I have a few, so go ahead. So take it.
Okay, that's good. They have more than one. That's a good sign. I did enjoy watching this. I really did. It's not for everyone. It's a bit of a slow burn there for a while. And it's, like I said, definitely has its share of issues, continuity wise and just to sort of say, I can't say too much because I really don't want to ruin it for anybody who would watch it. But Greg Lamberson is a good guy. I like him a lot. I really want to support his work. So I'm going to say, watch this movie. You may or you may not like it. I'm going to give it a right down the center 2.5. It's not a horrible film. It's not a great film, but it is a fun film. Favorite scene. And again, this is a hard one to, and this was it was a change of tone for me, but the very end, the last scene, we kind of have Craig in, and I can't say too much about it, but it kind of moves into a Frank Miller, almost like a Sin City type feel, like a cartoonish. Did you guys feel that?
Yes.
With that?
Yeah.
And I like that. I thought it looked great, and I enjoyed that. It might have actually been better if they'd maybe done that in a few other areas. Not 100% sure, but I like the fact that that's how they did that, final scene when that character kind of meets his destiny. Yeah,
it was very pulpy, and it needed more of that pulpy feel to it.
Yeah. So I really did like that. I liked it visually, and I enjoyed it thematically, and it worked for me. So what am I forgetting to say? Anything? I don't think so. That's
you got it. You're good. All right, Crystal Cleveland, you're up next. Final thoughts, your score, and favorite scene.
So shockingly, I am giving it a 2.75. That's what I had. So that's what I'm giving.
Wow, nice.
Better than Dave. Yeah.
Nice.
I liked it. I had some serious issues with some stuff, but it was smaller portions of the movie than I actually. It was all about Craig for me, though, to be honest with you. I was like riveted a little bit by him. I'm so easy. And my favorite scene is actually, it's going to be a line because it cracked me up, and it's delivered by Craig, of course. And it's Something Is Wrong in Denmark, which I just started laughing. The originals from Hamlet, Shakespeare, like Something Is Wrong in the State of Denmark, but the newer version is what he said. And I thought it was delivered perfectly, and it made me laugh, and it kind of made me feel like, some parts of the movie. Yeah. But it was good. I totally recommend watching it.
Nice. All right, Jeff Mohr, you are up next. Your final thoughts, your score, and favorite scene?
Oh, dear. I'm giving this a 2.25. And I always think people should watch these movies. Because I think hopefully you can get an idea from the four of us whether this is something you might like. And people need to make up their own minds. And you got Craig Sheffer, and Dave. I think you took my favorite scene.
Oh wow!
If it involved a harpoon.
It did. In fact,
yes.
That was visually well constructed. Yeah. I'm going to take the O'Leary gets a hammer.
Yeah, you like that, didn't you?
I did. Okay. Well, and it wasn't easy for him, but he hung in there.
We're that again. That was hilarious.
You're hired.
All right. You could have done that for like the past 30 minutes and it would have been beautiful. Everything else. All right. So, this movie's kind of all over the place tonally for me. The music choices bothered me. Especially like the first time he's going up the steps, it just felt so odd.
Overly dramatic.
Yeah. I don't know. A subtle I needed some of that. But anyway, some things didn't work. Some things did, and when it did work, I found myself enjoying it. It usually involved Craig Sheffer doing, and I really loved when he lost it toward the end, and how they kind of brought that on. I really did enjoy that. What did he say? It was like, I'm at 275 steps and there's only supposed to be 50 something.
Why am I not at the top?
I know. Yeah. And I was just like, that was the greatest thing ever. And I was like, man, I am getting kind of bothered watching the same scene over and over again, but I like the point you're making. So there are moments that work. And then the crawling eye happens and I'm all about it. But, there were some lighting issues that kind of took me out of it. But again, like I said, the things that do work. And I will say that I'm grateful this was a different type of Lighthouse movie than the Lighthouse movies we've been getting, because we've been getting kind of the same story, that the famous story about the lighthouse and the two people there. And this wasn't that. So, oh my God, thank you. For that,
those damn artsy ones, right?
Well, yeah. Damn artsy fartsy movies. Don't do it. So it's all about Craig. I think Crystal said it right. I'm going to give it a 2 point.
And something again,
Yeah. Well, he's well. Let's hope he gets some more work. I'd like to see some more things. He's got something called Sarah in the pipeline. I hope that's good. So I'm going to give it a 2.25 like Jeff. I think that's about where it is. And my favorite scene, well, I've said it like 10 times. It's the crawling eye scene. And what I mean by that is that there's not literally a crawling eye. I'm not saying that. But if you've seen the movie The Crawling Eye, you might be able to figure out what I'm trying to say. And when you see this movie, and if you've seen The Crawling Eye, you will know what I'm trying to say because it's right there, and it's hilarious. And I kind of dug it. I literally like when So it's through a window. If you haven't figured that out, and something comes into view, and I went, no, they're not gonna do that. I know, but yeah. So I could have used that a little sooner. Oh my! Oh, but yes.
Thank you. Crawling eye scene that didn't have a crawling eye.
Thank you for. Well, the other one didn't either, really.
Well, you're right.
But I mean, it did. But it didn't.
Yeah, I was about to say. I was like, well,
it did, but it didn't. It did. But it didn't. All right. There's our review, and I'm losing my mind. There's our review of Widow's Point. No. Yes. I said it right.
Oh, yeah, you did.
You get a star.
I screwed it up. Yay. All right. Thank you for hanging out with us and putting up with all our nonsense. Dave, Jeff, Crystal, thank you for joining me tonight and putting up with me being just an idiot. All right. Thank you.
It's not just you.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. And I feel like I have a knife in my back at the same time. Thank you.
Or a hammer.
A hammer in my head.
Totally.
All right. Yes. Yeah. All right. I think we should stop now and say good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Gruesome Magazine.